Breaking news! Naku po, nakakatindig balahibo. Pangulong Bongbong Marcos, viral matapos gumawa ng kasaysayan ngayong araw. Paano ba naman kasi mga kababayan? Tinapos lang naman ni PBBM ang matagal ng negosasyon sa isang mayamang bansa para sa katangi-tangi at nakakaiyak na misyon. At eto matindi mga kababayan, dahil mismong si PBBM ang nag-anunsyo nito sa publiko. Grabe, dito talaga hindi makamove on ang mga kalaban dahil tanging si PBBM lamang ang may totoong malasakit sa bawat mamamayang Pilipino. Naku po, history in the making na naman ito sigurado. Kaya naman mga kababayan, wag na natin itong patagalin pa. Samahan niyo ako at sabay-sabay nating alamin ang maiinit na balita sa araw na ito. Breaking news! Kinumpirma ni Pangulong Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. na malapit nang bumalik sa bansa ang convicted overseas Filipino worker na si Mary Jane Veloso matapos ang mahigit isang dekada na diplomasya ng Pilipinas at mga konsultasyon sa gobyerno ng Indonesia na inihayag ni PBBM ngayong araw, November 20, 2024. Ipinahayag ni Pangulong Marcos ang kanyang taus-pusong pasasalamat sa Pangulo ng Indonesia na si Prabowo Subianto at sa mga pamahalaan ng Indonesia para sa kanilang mabuting kalooban. Binanggit din ng Pangulo ang ibinahaging pangako ng dalawang bansa sa katarungan at pakikiramay. Sa nakalipas na 42 ASEAN Summit and related summit sa Indonesia noong May 2023, binigyang diin ni Pangulong Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. na patuloy na umaapila ng gobyerno ng Pilipinas sa Indonesia para sa pardon, pagpapababa ng sentensya at extradition ni Veloso para makapagsilbi siya sa kanyang sentensya sa Pilipinas. Si Veloso ay matatandaang nakulong sa Indonesia mula pa noong taong 2010 matapos arestuhin sa kasong drug trafficking. Aniya ng Pangulo na ang kwento ni Mary Jane Veloso ay sumasalamin sa marami. Sa isang ina na nakulong sa kahirapan na gumawa ng isang desperadong pagpili na nagpabago sa takbo ng kanyang buhay habang siya ay pinanagot sa ilalim ng batas ng Indonesia na nananatili siyang biktima sa kanyang mga kalagayan. Ayon sa Department of Foreign Affairs, ang kabutihang loob na ipinakita ng karatig bansa ay sumasailalim din sa magandang ugnayan ng Pilipinas at Indonesia na protektahan ang mga OFW nito. Ang Department of Foreign Affairs din ay formal nang humiling ng clemency para sa kay Veloso noong September 6, 2022. Siya ay inaresto sa Yogyakarta noong 2010 matapos siyang matagpo ang may bitbit na maleta na naglalaman ng mahigit 2.6 kilograms ng heroin. Hinatulan din siya ng kamatayan sa parehong taon.
Magandang hapon, Malacanang Press Corps, and welcome sa ating press briefing ngayong araw, November 20. President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. confirmed this morning that Mary Jane Veloso is coming home. Mary Jane Veloso has been imprisoned in Indonesia since 2010 for drug trafficking. In his statement, President Marcos said that this agreement was reached after over a decade of diplomacy and consultations with the Indonesian government. He thanked President Prabowo Subianto and the Indonesian government for this goodwill. And to give us more details about this, we have with us today Department of Foreign Affairs Undersecretary Eduardo De Vega and Department of Justice Assistant Secretary Miko Clavano. Good afternoon. Go ahead, Yusuf.
Good afternoon. As mentioned, our president announced this, and the situation actually is that our governments are discussing the terms of this transfer. Indonesia discussed this with us through our ambassador in Jakarta weeks ago, through the Indonesian Coordinating Minister for Law, Human Rights, Immigration and Corrections, His Excellency Yusril Mahendra, who had mentioned that Indonesia is formulating a policy of transfer of persons, of foreign persons to their host countries. In fact, Philippines is not the only country which has been requesting this. So because of that, our Department of Justice, and we are represented here by the DOJ, sent the formal request, and what we just need now is to sit down with Indonesia as to the details. Our friends in Indonesia have always been strong supporters of the Philippines. The very fact that Ms. Veloso is still alive this very day is a tribute to the work that our government has been doing for over a decade, but also to the warm ties of friendship and cooperation between the Philippines and Indonesia, and we are very grateful for this. Indonesia itself has a law which will take effect in 2026 about what in effect would be, if not necessarily the abolition of the death penalty, but some sort of informal non-implementation of the death penalty, except in certain cases. So originally, among the things we'd been asking from Indonesia was the commutation of her sentence. But now with the new administration, which obviously the new administration of President Pasabog wants to open a new chapter in its relations with foreign countries, including the Philippines. Now we may even get a transfer. So just a matter of the details. I cannot give you confirmation as to when she'll be home, what are the conditions for her to be detained here, except eventually the goal would be not just for her to be transferred, but for the president to be able to issue clemency, our president. So the DOJ is here to explain the legal basis for this, given that we do not have a transfer of sentenced persons with Indonesia. May I clarify also, the Indonesians are aware, and part of the reason why she has been not kept alive and not executed is that we are prosecuting the illegal traffickers or those who responsible for bringing her to Indonesia. There is a pending case in Nueva Ecija, in the RTC of Nueva Ecija, and an important aspect of that case is that precisely her statement is needed, and it will be very helpful if instead of getting a deposition from Indonesia, if she were here. So the bottom line, once she's here, we are at least assured that there will be no death penalty. We do not issue the death penalty. We do not have the death penalty. And we would, under principles of international humanitarian law, have some right to refuse if the Indonesians would request her back. But that's precisely a sign that they are not interested to execute Ms. Veloso. And we thank them for that. Last thing, there was a lot of speculation as to what was the return or what was the condition. The Indonesians have not requested any payback, any quid pro quo for this. May I clarify? This is not in return for anything. Of course, being from ASEAN, we know about debt of gratitude, and that similarly they may request something for us in the future. But right now, they are not asking anything in return for this arrangement. It is just a matter of them, of their devising, and it's still a work in progress for Indonesia, their official policy of the transfer. So when she gets here, if she gets here, and when she gets here, she will not immediately be released. It means we will commit to detain her until such time that we've a mutual agreement that she could be given clemency. But at least she would be here. So thank you again, Indonesia. And it's a gesture of the strong leadership of our president, his friendship with the new president of Indonesia, and the commitment of the Philippine government for our overseas nationals. Salamat po.
From the DOJ, would you like to
I would just like to support the statements of Yusek De Vega and trying to fill in the details of the case of Mary Jane Veloso, both in Indonesia and here in the Philippines. So in April of 2010, she was caught and convicted for drug trafficking. She was sentenced to have been executed supposedly on April 29, 2015. As mentioned already by Yusek De Vega, the government's efforts and collaboration and also the filing of a local case here in the Philippines has effectively delayed the execution of Mary Jane Veloso. The cases filed here are qualified trafficking in persons, illegal recruitment, and estafa, where she stands as a very crucial witness. And that is the reason why we entered into several dialogues with the Indonesian government to get her testimony via deposition. And so this has been going on for more than a decade, and we have reached this point where the Indonesian government has been gracious enough to issue this policy of repatriating certain foreign nationals, certain detainees in Indonesia back to their home country. The process that we had to go through, as also mentioned by Yusek De Vega, was the Indonesian government asked or requested that the Department of Justice, through the Secretary, write a letter of request requesting for the transfer or repatriation of Miss Mary Jane Veloso back to the Philippines, which we have already accomplished. And we again thank the Indonesian government for this act of grace. We also attribute this to the good relations and the good friendship which our president has with the Indonesian government and specifically President Prabowo.